What I'll do right now, I will start. I know people are still coming in, but we have quite a bit to cover, and I want to make certain that I respect everyone's time. We're slated for our webinar to be 1 hour in length, but I want to give all of the time necessary to be able to respond to the questions that will be posed, and also to make certain that I fully communicate ways that you're going to be able to continue to offer some feedback as we navigate these uncharted waters in Waterbury. So good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to conduct this webinar this afternoon, to be able to give you some important information. And don't be surprised by the information that I'm going to share with you, that there are still some question marks to a lot of things. So it's to keep everyone posted, to keep everyone current on what is happening now, but definitely there are going to be some unanswered questions that we still do not know. I am sure that all of you over the last 14 months have seen lots of information coming your way, lots of uncertainty. And while we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, the pandemic is not over. We are navigating this change in the midst of a pandemic. And I want to commend all of you for the great job that you have done navigating some unknowns, and as we continue to do so and move forward with not only the end of this school year, but discussions about the summer and discussions about the fall. Some of the plans are going to be pretty well finalized, and some of them are not finalized at all, because we are expecting to get questions from you and to take some feedback from you so that we can move our district forward. I cannot express enough how much I value every single person on this webinar, and all of the people who are even not on this webinar who perhaps could not attend. So today we're going to talk primarily about the activities that we plan for May and June. We're going to talk about the end of the school year. We're going to talk about summer programming, and we're going to talk about the fall of 21-22. This webinar is being recorded. And so if someone is not able to join us today, they could join us later and hear everything that we're saying, as well as all the people who are on this webinar can pose questions. At the end of the webinar, I will certainly try to answer those questions. And if the answer is I don't know, I will tell you. And if the answer is I don't know yet, but I will probably know in another month, I will tell you that. And if I say I don't know the answer and I won't have the answer at all, I'll be telling you the truth. So just follow along with us. I'm very pleased that we have members of my senior cabinet who are here today. They, along with some of their colleagues, have been working tirelessly to really make certain that we are collectively working on behalf of all of you and to support you in everything, especially during the unprecedented times. Sometimes you get tired of saying that, but it is a fact that history is not the way that we've ever experienced it before. So I think it merits being said. But I first want to introduce Jose. Jose Sanchez joined us as an intern. You know, we were able to connect with him as an intern, and we were so excited. You know, Sujatha and Will and I, we were just so excited. And then he got hired. So our technology department hired him, and we said, well, we have to keep him. So Jose continues to work with us as our technician. He has been on just about every webinar that I've conducted over the last several months, and he continues to join us here. So I wanted you to meet Jose. Sometimes he goes off camera, but I wanted to say thank you for all of the work that he has done and continues to do for us, and making certain that all of our presentations and all of our technology is up and running, and for the great team player that he is for our team. I also want to introduce other members of our team who are here today. I want to introduce our assistant superintendents. We have Dr. Janice Epperson, and we have Mrs. Noreen Buckley, who is joining us. Dr. Epperson and Ms. Buckley are specifically working with the elementary, middle, and high schools and pre-K. And then we have Mr. Matt Brown, who joined us as the Chief Turnaround Officer, and he works directly with our turnaround schools. And at the moment, we have 3 of our middle schools and newly selected will be high school that are in a turnaround receiving the Commissioners Network. And so Mr. Brown works with those 4 schools, and he also has a tremendous amount of impact in working with other schools in the district. But primarily as Chief Turnaround Officer, his really direct influence in working with those schools that are in the Commissioners Network in school turnaround. We have our Director of Communications, Ms. Wyckoff. Sujatha Wyckoff has been with us, as my right hand in communications. She's done a tremendous job and continues to do so. She also has an intern who's not on here, but Carla is her intern as well. And Carla will be graduating from college this weekend. So we congratulate Carla. We have Mr. Miguel Pabon, who has recently joined us as our Director of Pupil Services, and we're so excited to have him. We are excited that our Director, our Chief Financial Officer, Doreen Biolo, has joined us on this call. And between Doreen and myself, we talk a lot about money, but we really talk about impact of what that's going to do and have on our district. And we're going to talk a little at the end of this webinar about some of the funding that we've recently received and how you can collectively join us to making certain that it not only gets contributed towards the district, but that it helps us to truly transform Waterbury Public Schools. So Doreen, Ms. Biolo is on this call, and Mr. Juan Mendoza, who joins us as our Assistant Superintendent as well. He's our Assistant Superintendent, and he directs human capital. And we've definitely made certain that our human capital lens is not just about hiring people, but it's really with the human care of caring about people, developing them, nurturing them, making certain that they stay in Waterbury. We want you to stay in Waterbury, and we want you to be engaged in such a way that you see career opportunities in Waterbury and ways of being able to expand. So Mr. Mendoza leads that work. We have Nari Touchette. Ms. Touchette joins us as our Director of College and Career Readiness. And she's done some amazing work in a very short period of time that she's been here. But as we've expanded counselors in all of our elementary schools, and of course our middle and high school, we already had counselors, she has an important work of being able to hire and select elementary school counselors. And it is a challenge because there aren't very many counselor positions or counselor applicants that come in with the tools that our schools are looking for right now, but she's actively recruiting and seeking to hire. It is our goal to have an elementary counselor for all of our elementary schools. As you know, we have not had that for a number of years, and so we're adding elementary counselors. But beyond adding, it's really the work of college and career readiness and really making certain that we can impact our students on a very profound way on every campus, not only some campuses. So she leads that work. And then we're very pleased to have Mr. Dan Barry, who has joined us as our school safety coordinator, and we're so pleased to have him join our team. I think he started on the 22nd of April, and he hit the ground running. He's met some of you and will take on a lead in security and safety for our campuses. So we're very pleased that he has joined our team. Also from Waterbury, so knows a lot of you, and great connections to be able to facilitate the important work that he's going to lead in Waterbury. So those are the members of our team who are here today. You will hear from us at various points based on the questions that may be posed, and we want to take the time to go through some of the files that we're going to be downloading and making certain you have access to after this webinar is over. So I want to talk with you, and as I said before, this is a recording, so you will be able to watch it later, or your colleagues can at a later time. Let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen before the end of this school year. Every decision that has been made throughout the school year has also had a safety lens to it. The safety protocols have been followed. We've had a great partnership and relationship with the health department, Cindy Vitone. We've had great partnership and relationship with Adam Renko, who is leading our crisis management team for the entire city of Waterbury. And so we have been in constant communication with all of them every step of the way, every time we've not only had a COVID positive case, but whenever we had suspicions of COVID positive, and even before that, to make certain that we mitigated all the possibilities of people getting ill, getting the virus. And so as we've continued to make decisions about, well, do we go in person? Do we go virtual? They have been teammates with us along the way. And as we neared the end of the school year, I know that our students and our staff and parents wanted to know, are you going to have graduation? Are you going to be able to have end of year activities? And pretty early on, we were able to verify that we will have graduation for all of our high schools. And we were able to do that and secure that at Municipal Stadium. The dates have been set. The students engaged in conversations with me about that. And I'm very proud of the student voice, along with their principals, who participated in making certain that we were able to put together a plan that would enable, as of today, four invited guests per student to attend the ceremony. And when I tell you that things change on a day-to-day basis, I can't overemphasize just how much that really is a fact. Sometimes we get information that comes in at a rapid speed the same day that you've just said something different, and then you get new information and you have to go back to the drawing board and say, well, that's where I was 2 hours ago, but as of this hour, this has changed. So when students asked about, can I have prom, it was definitely, a month ago, it was definitely not looking good because the numbers were high in Waterbury. Everything indicated that having anything in an environment that would put many people together in one room was impossible. And I always preface that with saying, with the information that I have today, I would have to tell you no. Because based on the information that I have today, no, we cannot do that, because that's the information that I have in front of me. Literally less than an hour before I went on my last meeting with the principals and with the students, the high school students, literally less than an hour before I was scheduled for that meeting, prepared to tell them that we were not going to be able to proceed with any kind of after school or any kind of a celebration, or certainly no prom. Literally an hour before that occurred, I had another meeting with a national organization who was presenting to several districts across the nation, and Waterbury happened to be one of 2 districts in Connecticut and several other districts across the nation. We were accepted into a program called ICAT, which allowed us to partner with a provider to facilitate rapid testing for COVID. That opened up the door to be able to say, well, maybe some kind of activity is going to be possible for our students. And so literally less than an hour before I went on that conference meeting with my students and principals, that opened up a door to say, well, it might not be a traditional prom, but it could be something that would bring celebration and closure and happiness to a graduating group of seniors. And so we were able to do that. We are working on it right now as we speak. I have several members of our team that are working on committees that will actually be able to give a COVID test and will allow for that document to be presented to the principal of the high school, the seniors, and will allow the seniors to be able to have some kind of end of year activity in addition to graduation. And while that is moving along, the details have not been totally published yet because we're still working on that with the health department and with the national organization, with Rite Aid, who will provide the actual testing. But we are now seeing that we could open that door for the seniors to have at least one other activity that the principals have already met and are deciding what is that going to look like for that campus. And so they're working with the assistant superintendents, the crisis management team, and everybody else, because the plan has to still be approved with all of the protocols with various agencies. But we see yet one door opening, and it happened just like that. And we were able to do that. What that also means is we're considering what else that opens. So I know that our elementary, middle, and high schools would like to do something for their students, and we are in the process. The assistant superintendents, along with this committee, that when that door opened to do COVID testing, they are looking at, so what might that activity look like? Who can attend? Who can't attend? What do they need to present in terms of a COVID negative test that allows them to be able to have access to that event? So that's forthcoming. And we see those activities, those end of year activities, perhaps looking a lot different in June of this year, certainly a lot different than they looked June of last year. So that one call, that one meeting, that impromptu meeting opened up an avenue to be able to say, not the traditional, but certainly something of quality that schools can plan for their children that give them something beyond just meeting in remote areas to celebrate the end of the school year. So our end of the school year will look different this year. And we continue to define that as we learn more information. So if you are in elementary or middle, of course, high school, and you want to know, so what does that mean for me? Your primary point of contact is your principal, who will be in touch with the assistant superintendents, and of course, the whole team, crisis management team, health department, and everybody else, to be able to define what might that look like and when will it happen for each campus. We are not going to be able to have all of the activities that everybody has had prior to March 13th of 2020. It will look different. So it's not like we should expect that things are going to go back to the way that they were, but they're going to be redefined in what can we do this year to celebrate our students and to apply a really celebratory closure to the school year. I know that we've also talked about what happens with summer. What happens with our computers? What happens with all of this? So I'm going to jump to the most controversial topic of all, which is probably the computers. And so as we're rethinking this, I think that we recognize that prior to March 13th, we were not on a path to have one-to-one technology implementation in Waterbury. We were not. And many other school districts in Connecticut were not either. All of the Alliance school districts were struggling with getting just enough computers to be able to equip labs. So we were not in a position to say that we were going to be able to have one-on-one. That changed immediately. And so with various partnerships, we are now poised in Waterbury Public Schools to have one-on-one. Every child who needed a computer for teaching and learning, every staff member who needed it for teaching and learning has one for teaching and learning. That really, that eliminated a gap or an opportunity gap that we were not going to be able to fulfill in the absence of these partnerships and the funding that came in. It is our plan and our goal in Waterbury to sustain a one-to-one moving forward. In other words, we're not going to regress and go back to, well, we don't have enough computers, therefore we're not going to be able to continue learning and using the virtual platforms and really engaging students in ways that are perhaps best suited for their learning mode and their learning style. So one-to-one is here to stay. The other piece of that is, so what happens at the end of the school year if we collect them all? Well, I'm rethinking all of that because I do believe that during this critical time of June and July and August, if the students do not have a computer, if the teachers don't have a computer because we've collected them all, I think that digital divide continues to widen. Because if we're asking people to stay connected, and that is the only computer that they have access to during the summer, then I think we are defeating our purpose of being able to say that we are providing a tool in the hands of teachers and students that could best help them to stay connected. It's very difficult for me to ask you to check your emails and for you to ask you to be able to do some lessons on iReady, or to be able to assure that you do some reading when you don't necessarily have access to a library, but you have access to a computer. You can do that. But if you don't have that tool, you can just say, well, too bad, I'm going to see you in September, because I'm no longer connected, if that was my only means of being able to connect. So we're rethinking the entire process of how we're going to be able to manage any kind of computer collection. I definitely believe we need to keep the computers, and I believe that with 18,500 plus students that we account for this school year, aside from the seniors who are graduating, we believe the majority of the students are returning to Waterbury Public Schools. In the absence of returning to Waterbury Public Schools, the computers can be tracked. So we know that when your students come back to you in the fall, they have a computer. That's a tool. Just like they walk in with a book, they walk in with a computer. That's the ticket to the door. And so, and since we are also planning on some learning during the summer, I think that perhaps more students than ever before are going to be eligible for some kind of accelerated learning during the summer. Now, whether we have it in the traditional way, meaning on this date and ending on that date, or whether we have it starting later in the summer, that's still up for discussion. But we're going to have some kind of accelerated learning for our students, for those students that may have been disengaged, either because technology just didn't work all the time for them, even though we did provide for easier access of fast speed internet. But let's say they just weren't able to make that happen. Or perhaps it was because you had multiple children in the household and it was difficult for that child to listen, to hear what the teacher was saying. It became disruptive more than something that was educational. Or perhaps we had families in distress, which we have had many, and we've had children in distress. Trauma was real. We saw it probably now more than ever before. And so that disconnect provided for some students, a real disconnect from their teachers and from people that they have really cried out for all year long, whether it was a teacher or whether it was a teacher assistant, a paraprofessional, a counselor, someone that they connected with in the school, whether it was in our cafeterias, or the people who always met them with a smile, handing them their breakfast or their lunch in most untraditional ways for an entire 14 months so far. It was someone at the school that made that connection to that child, that they were missing that for a long period of time. And so we need to assure that as we are evolving into the next year and beyond, that we're cognizant of those relationships, because those relationships mattered for our children and they matter for our staff. Because not only the children go through trauma, some of our staff went through trauma as well. And so we needed to be respectful of that, which is why we were very, very accommodating on a lot of different fronts. I think that, there were times when people just had some obstacles that they wanted to work. But maybe they couldn't at the time, but maybe if they could use the technology to work, then they could still perform. And those things, we need to rethink that. And I think we have, and I think you're going to see some more of that as we move forward. So on the technology front, I think I've told you as much as I have for the moment, but you could count on us still being able to use and engage with the technology even over the summer. And then we will work and figure out, so what do we do next to make certain that if there's a computer that is not working, that we are going to be able to make some adjustments for that. But keep in mind, computers last longer than a year. So if you know that this is your tool, you need to take care of it. And no, we're not in the business of just handing out computers to everyone who breaks them 2, 3, 4, 5 times. We're not. But since we are going to be back in person in the fall, when people come into the classroom, they are coming into their classrooms with their tool ready to learn. and it should be operative. If it's operative now, it should be operative then. If it's not, then we will deal with it. But it may not be an easy answer as to say, oh yeah, just hand it over and I'll give you a brand new one. It might be handed over, you can use the one at the school until I repair it for you. So I think that there are ways to really making that happen in such a way that we don't have to create our own digital divide moving forward. The other thing I wanted to share is the summer learning. We have probably more students that will qualify for some kind of summer learning. I said that earlier. But in addition to that, we have received additional funding that will provide for the children that reside in Waterbury, the city of Waterbury, have the most extensive opportunity to attend summer camp than I've ever seen, and that we'll probably ever see again in our entire lives. We have that for the next 3 summers. And so that is a means of getting children to be children again. You know, they need to play. If parents are still fearful of sending their children to school in person, and we have less than 50% of our children in person. Some schools have more than 50%, but as a district wide, we have less than 50% of our students in person. If students aren't coming to school in person, we have to get them back. And so the summer provides an opportunity to be comfortable coming out and doing something that can connect you back to your peers and have fun while you're doing that. You know, there's never been an issue having fun while you still learn. I mean, learning should be fun. So this summer, there's going to be an opportunity for more summer camps and more summer learning opportunities than we've ever had, ever. And that means that we have various programs with the city of Waterbury, the Parks and Recreation. We have activities that we're going to do ourselves in Waterbury Public Schools, the summer learning. We have a coding camp that we're going to have, and a STEM camp that we're going to have for one of the first times, with over 150 students, I believe, that have already enrolled, registered. We have an opportunity with PAL, with Boys and Girls Club, with the YMCA, with other organizations who are planning to do some summer events that students will have an opportunity to sign up for. And this time, it's at no cost to them. We also have the opportunity to hire more young people in Waterbury to be able to work this summer, whether they work as counselors during the camp, or whether they work as mentors, or they work as assistants to the teachers, or they work as buddies to the students, or they assist students. We are going to have the opportunity to pay the students, and we're going to be paying them in a really nice salary to be able to come in and to work this summer. So this is an opportunity for those students that perhaps don't need to attend summer learning session to engage and to get paid for it. The age for the opportunities for those children are 14 on up. So 14 to 18-year-olds can apply for and be able to obtain a job. The application process, we don't have that yet. It's going to be a collaboration between Workforce Development Board as well as the Waterbury, the City of Waterbury, and Waterbury Public Schools. We've hired 2 people who are going to help us facilitate all of the programs that we're going to have this summer. And we may be looking to hire more, because this is an unprecedented amount of opportunities that we have had across the district. And quite honestly, we're really challenged with knowing, so where are you going to put all of the children? What are they going to do? How are you going to know that they're there? And how are they going to know to be able to make a really good decision about which one they want to participate in? Or can they participate in 2? And of course, we have an extensive 21st century grant and great opportunities for students to attend. And I think that's already been scheduled with several hundred students that will be participating this summer. But opportunities just abound in Waterbury. And so it's incumbent upon us to make them known to the students, give the students and the parents an opportunity to choose which ones they're going to attend, and then also make certain that when it is our responsibility to staff it, that we staff it appropriately. But we're not responsible for staffing every one of those. Some of those are sponsored or will be sponsored by participating partners or organizations that we've been honored to partner with for years. And so that's an example of what's getting ready to happen in June and July and August, as our students are going to get an opportunity to do and participate in fun activities, the enrichment activities that will help them to feel comfortable coming back, but very importantly, really take care of just being children again. And I think that's so important because it has definitely been a missing piece. Even if we loved the virtual environment, it was still a missing piece for healthy and the well-being of everybody, adults as well as for children. So you can see some of that getting ready to happen. The staff will have copies, and you know, we can talk about some of the activities. I don't know if any of you want to present or get ready, you know, some of the summer opportunities that will be available. I don't want to cover every single one of them in detail, but I want to cover some of them because I do have a question for our teachers and staff as it relates to the summer accelerated learning. You know, so if you want to present that and put that up on the screen, I will keep talking until you get that up there. But we have several opportunities for our teachers and our staff, you know, our nurses, our teacher assistants, our teachers, and others, our cafeteria, food service staff, you know, our police, SROs, people to really begin to work during the summer. But there's so much going on. And while we have laid this out so that you can look at it, what summer learning is going to look like will be contingent upon getting a really strong pool of teachers to sign up to teach during the critical time. And so I want to hear from our teachers. I want to hear from you if you're interested in applying to teach, or are you too tired? You know, do you need a break? Do you have another plan? Do you have an idea of when we could do this accelerated learning at a time that's most conducive to get the best teachers in front of children that are desperately needing to reconnect with teaching and learning in a meaningful way? And so I need to hear from you. You know, maybe you have applied to teach summer school, but we are going to need more teachers to teach in this accelerated learning environment than ever before, because we have a larger number of students that have been disconnected in a lot of ways. So I'll go over some of the things that will be offered. Of course, we're going to have the elementary extended academic support. That, you know, that's for our kindergarten to 12th grade students. We'll have the middle school extended academy, and we'll have the middle school STEM camp. That's with Go IT and National Inventors Hall of Fame. We'll have high school extended academic support. You know, we've got to get our high school students to not only come back in person, we've got to get them to be able to graduate eventually. We will also have early college high school summer enrichment. We're going to have the 21st century after school YMCA programs too. They're going to camp. We'll have the State Department of Education after school YMCA camp. We're going to have Gear Up for our current 8th graders who participate. They will have a camp. We'll have the Applied Behavior Analysis. You know, that's a district program for students. We'll have community-based learning. Again, engaging our students in the meaningful way so that they can go out and they can really connect with workforce and learning skills. We'll have the Behavior Disorder Learning Center. This is a very strong program that we've typically conducted for a very long time. There's a need for us to continuously provide, especially for our students with special needs, because oftentimes this has been a very challenging environment to really meet the needs of all of our children. So Behavior Disorder Learning Center therapeutic intervention, we'll have that program for pre-K. We'll have community-based training. We'll have essential skills classroom. We'll have the essential skills classroom in several schools. We'll have the inclusion program at several schools. In addition to that, we're going to have the Maloney Summer Experience. We're going to have inclusion programs at several schools. We're going to have the Rotella Joy Summer Theme for kindergarten through 4th grade. We're going to have pre-K program for our students. We're going to have resource room opportunities for our students. We'll have the Scope 6th to 8th grade. We'll have WAMS Encore, which is a summer arts program that has been very well received over the years. We're going to have that this summer. We'll have Manufacturing Your Future. And then we'll have Future Bankers programs. We'll have opportunities for our students to participate in, let's see, move it down one more slide. Summer program for Bureau of Recreation programs. We have Boys and Girls Club. We'll have West Hartford continuing and summer education. We'll have YMCA. We'll have PAL, which is a police league, police athletic league, which serves over 3,000 of our students in Waterbury, by the way. Students will have an opportunity to learn how to swim. They'll be experiencing culinary experience, athletics, sports, fine arts. It's just going to be so many programs that if I had a child coming to Waterbury Public Schools, I would have a hard time deciding, so which program are they going to go to? And so we're gonna publish that for you to see the wide array of opportunities this summer. And then we're going to move forward to try to create some avenues so that our students can know what these are, their parents can know, because a student can't go someplace unless their parents know, at least you hope not. And so we're going to make certain that we can not only make that available, but we give them some time to be able to decide, so which one are they going to participate in? Of course, we know that if students need the acceleration during the summer, that's a top priority. And all of the partners that we have partnered with understand that the academic engagement piece comes first. Our challenge, however, will be, do we need to modify something so that it allows our students to be able to do more this summer, to play, to learn, to be enriched, and what might that look like? So if you have some creative ideas, we're interested in hearing it. Very importantly is that we're going to need a very strong teaching staff to be able, teaching and leading staff to lead us through this. Now, as we talk about summer, you may have a lot of questions on summer. Yes, the summer is going to be in person. We feel we have to get back to the in-person so that we can prepare for the fall of 21-22, which will be all in person. That's my next topic of discussion. So what happens, we were in the summer, we're getting people back. We want people to be socially and emotionally really equipped to handle, the effects of this pandemic, but also ready for the 21-22 school year in person. It will be in person. Now, that does not mean that we will discontinue Virtual Academy. We will have a virtual academy, but it will look totally different than the virtual academy that we had this year. We want to keep the toolbox of a virtual learning whenever we need it. We want to keep it always as the go-to resource that we have if we have an inclement weather day, if we have a need to be able to work remotely. But the way that we did it this year, we did it as a form of mitigating the fact that some people were not going to be ready or willing to come back in person. It's not going to be that way in the new school year. Everybody has to come back in person. But we'll provide a virtual academy, perhaps to offer our students an opportunity to take courses that they could not normally take in a traditional school day. An example of that might be if there is an advanced placement calculus class at one school, but the other school doesn't have an advanced placement calculus teacher, that student can apply to be able to take that class at the other school, and it would be virtual. That's an example. Now, as we lead this work to define, so what does virtual look like moving forward in Waterbury? We're going to rely very heavily on our Reimagining Education group. And we've done a lot of work. Some of you are members of that committee who have helped us to rethink and reimagine. We're not finished rethinking, and we by far have not finished reimagining. We've barely touched the surface. But as we're looking at what virtual can provide for us, we mustn't forget that virtual environment provided us an opportunity to do things we wouldn't have been able to do before. office hours, engaging with our parents in a way that, you know, they could probably come to parent-teacher conferences, while as if we were depending on the transportation and you know, maybe that didn't happen in as large a form. So we have easier access with virtual to access parent-teacher conference, parent engagement. You need to talk to a parent if you need to have a PPT, and the parent has trouble with transportation, or they can't always take off of work. Could they then be able to utilize the virtual platform to engage in that meaningful and very important meeting without having to be transported to that meeting? It's opened up an avenue for us, of course, to be able to say, if we're going to end school on June 16th, we're ending school on June 16th. We were able to actually plan graduation, knowing that we could actually graduate our students on June 14th, 15th, and 16th. We know that. We did not have to look at, well, if it rains or if we have too many snow days, we might have to extend the school year to another week. You know, we've lived that for a long time. We don't have to live it anymore. We can actually say a beginning and an end time for the school year, for the school calendar. We've also had opportunities for professional development. You know, I understand, and I'm not sure, but I think that many of our teachers really like to have some quality time dedicated in the work week to be able to do some professional development. And so we were able to embed that as a result of what lessons learned during COVID for you to actually have that. I don't know if that's going to look exactly the same way for 21-22, but I do want to hear from you. I want to hear, you know, our team wants to hear from you, and what might that look like if we did it, and how could that be more conducive to learning all of the things that we've been asked to learn in a very rapid pace of time. And you've done an amazing job, by the way. You've done an amazing job. I was so proud of you for so many who received the Google certifications. I was so proud of you for all of the different tools that you brought into your classroom, and you use them, and then you help your colleagues to learn how to use them, because it's a pretty uncomfortable environment. We didn't know how to do those things a year ago. And there's so much we still don't know how to do. It is my complete desire and commitment to you that we continue to really stress the importance of a virtual environment, but it's going to look different. And so as we're defining what is the virtual academy going to look like in the future, it may take us a year or two to really get it to the point where we want to say, this is what a virtual academy looks like in Waterbury Public Schools. But we're going to keep virtual academy. But it's not going to be as an option of, do I go in person or do I go virtual? And that will look significantly different for the next year. So that's kind of what the fall is. You know, we're working on it. And I'm going to ask, you know, Matt to share a little bit about, as I talk about some other things. I want you to know that some of this work is still evolving. And so you may have heard us talking about reimagining education. We looked at our strategic plan. We talked about what do we want to recommit to? That is, what are we doing and we want to keep, and we know we have to keep doing it. And then what do we want to just reimagine? And then that's not easy work, and it's not finished work, okay? It's not finished. So we're going to continue to work on that. Many of your colleagues have actually participated on committees to help us to reimagine that work. And we're going to continue that. So if you didn't, you know, you didn't participate, you didn't have time to participate, you weren't sure the time commitment that it would require, just know that this work is ongoing, and at various points during the school year and during the summer, I will make sure you have updates on the work that we're doing that will impact Waterbury Public Schools beyond the present, and it probably extends to the next 5 and 10 years or beyond. So what we're doing now, I have never in my entire career seen as much funding that has been provided for a school system in an entire nation as I have seen now. The beginning, many of you may have heard of ESSER 1. And ESSER 1 came at a time when we were really struggling with COVID. And that came as just a mode of survival. We got a lot of PPEs. We got a lot of safety protocol measures. The sanitizers, the cleaning products, and let's keep our schools clean. Let's keep them clean and sanitized. Let's make sure the teachers and the staff and our food service staff and our nurses and everybody have what they need to keep the children safe once the children come back in school, and to keep themselves safe as well. And then what happens, when we want to make sure that everybody has a mask and they're not coming from home with one, but we want to provide one. So ESSER 1, if you'll consider that to be, we needed ESSER 1 for survival. Okay, so we are out of the traditional school beginning on March 13th. We don't have the tools or equipment to be able to go virtual. How are you going to get there? So part of ESSER 1 helped with the technology. The other part of the technology was provided through partnerships, which allowed us to literally have enough computers for our teachers and our students to be able to teach and learn. And so that was a matter of survival in the midst of a pandemic that we've never experienced before in the history of our entire history. And so we were surviving through ESSER 1, and we used those funds deliberately and sensibly to be able to help us to survive. ESSER 2 might, be considered, well, maybe this is an opportunity to thrive. Maybe we could thrive in ESSER 2. And so we received $41 million in ESSER 2. We don't have the money now. We are still working on how would we spend the money when we get the money, but we do have a plan. And Matt's going to cover that in a second. But specifically, so just want to make sure that everybody understands, you don't get these pockets of money and you can spend it any way you want to. That's not how that works. So you have to spend it on certain things. And the bigger part, which is perhaps the most challenging for people to understand, is you can't do everything other people tell you you need to do, because when this money runs out in 2023 or 2024, that money is gone. So it's not like you can hire a lot of people and then in 2023 and 2024, what are you going to do with them? Because the money is gone. You can no longer sustain it. So it's important for us to be able to do things that are going to truly change our district, but at the same time realizing that after this money is gone, and if it's really great, you don't want to take it away. And so ESSER 2 comes in at $41 million. It's a little bit over $41 million. And we're to use it specifically for academic supports and learning acceleration, which is why we're talking about this summer learning and beyond, family community connections, school safety and SEL, remote learning, staff development and digital divide, and then other, which could encompass something like facilities. So, and ventilation and all of those things that are so critical to managing our buildings. And then Matt, I'm gonna just say one more thing and then I'm gonna let you take it away with that. Then we received this week, the news that we received an additional $89 million. And this is so new that the actual planning meetings have not taken place. And so the 20% of this $89 million, about $17 million, has to go into a bucket, so to speak, that will allow us to be able to address learning loss. And then, of course, we have to plan throughout the spring and the summer for the following spring and the summer. So that's just a little glimpse of the funding that we're getting. But the challenge that we have is that we want to make sure that this money is not going to be spent idly. It's going to be spent for good, and we have got to transform Waterbury Public Schools. Transformation is hard work. Transformation just knocks down all of the boxes and just says, what do we need to do to make certain that at the highest level, we address outcomes for our children and youth in Waterbury Public Schools. That's challenging work. That's not like, well, come back to work in the fall and everybody comes in person. That's not transformative. So what are you going to do differently based on what you've learned through this pandemic and beyond, that changes structures, that changes processes, that actually really challenge us to think about the learning needs of everybody in a school district? How do teachers learn? What's the best way to be able to assure that there is the time needed to be able to do that? What have we learned if some of our students actually learn better virtually than they did in person? How are you going to transform the district to make that happen? And so very complex work, not something that's going to be done in a few short weeks, but yet you get to see what we're working with, so that perhaps if you'd like to be a part of that, you could join in the work. Just be ready to roll up your sleeves and be able to think outside of what we've always done, to help us to capture some of the very best transformative strategies and commitments to making this work happen. Matt, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about that. I'm going to drink some water while you're doing that.
All right, Dr. Ruffin, thank you. I'll be super fast because I'm aware of our time here. As Dr. Ruffin said, we've gotten a bunch of funding that's really caused us to look at this recommit and reimagine. And most importantly, what we try to do is figure out, how do we integrate the hard work that we knew needed to happen before COVID, that we were planning for, developing the Portrait of the Graduate and other really innovative and reform-minded things, with these new needs that came about as a result of the pandemic. Just so folks know, I think many of you on this call probably came on. We had several calls like this before we did the drafting for the ESSER II, to ask people, how should we think about spending this money and integrating those plans? You'll see some of the responses. We had hundreds and hundreds of responses and thousands of different data points. And here are some of the ones that spoke to students saying, I'm worried about what it's going to take to get back into school. Staff saying, I need more time for planning. So we put a lot of the money into how to help staff plan for things like integrating the Portrait of the Graduate. You hear a lot about learning loss and about acceleration. What you also hear a lot about is, are we asking the right questions about what students need to be learning given what we see happening in the world today? And the Portrait of the Graduate gives us some ability to do that. Looking to do acceleration, increase the CTE and dual enrollment, summer learning, all of that's coming out of this bucket. The second priority, family and community connections. People were excited to get back into school. People thought also at the same time, as Dr. Ruffin said, there were some powerful things about the virtual learning, and how do they hold on to those? Now, this family and community connections funding really stretches across all 4 buckets and also through several others, so don't be dissuaded by that amount there. We've already invested a lot in expanded training to technologies for families and parents, to continue to strengthen our capacity to communicate with folks through Parent Square and other issues. And other platforms, as well as really looking to make stronger community connections, as you can see happening already with the summer and the way in which we're sponsoring students to take advantage of all of the range of the things that are happening here in the summer. School safety, social emotional well-being, a big part of the ESSER II grant, a big part of the district's work. Students are saying, we need to talk about things more than just assignments in school. We heard you loud and clear. We spent a lot of money and time into making sure that all schools are going to have counselors next year, that we're going to have social emotional curriculum and student success plans that really take advantage of this opportunity we've had to rethink what it means to educate the whole student. Cultural competency, equity training for all of our staff has been ongoing and will continue to be, as we know that's an essential piece of this work. Remote learning, making sure that we know that everyone has what they need to take advantage of both learning now and in the future. Students said they had a lot of issues with connections and devices. We're continuing to find ways, as Dr. Ruffin has already said, the way we rethink what we're doing with devices this summer, to increase the amount of time students have those devices in their hand, and to support teachers in both being able to utilize the instructional technology they have, as well as plan for it. As you know, there's a bunch of buildings that need attention to make sure we're doing what we want to make sure our ventilation systems are up to speed and up to code to really be as safe as possible when we return, and not just when we return, but looking 5-10 years down the road. So a big amount of the funding is going to restore our facilities to make them the type of buildings that we feel comfortable going in, not just in the fall, but in the years to come. As Dr. Ruffin said, there is a lot of money still that we are figuring out how to plan for. There is a process that we started with ESSER 2 that will continue with this third batch of money to make sure we're getting as many stakeholders as we're willing to give us their input about how we might think through using it. Lastly, as Dr. Ruffin said, it's not a blank check that comes that we just put in any direction. The state has directed us for some guidelines, and we're also always trying to figure out how do we revise this so that it supports this long-range plan. You'll be hearing more about that in the coming days, but that's a little bit of insight into how we've addressed the funding opportunities that ESSER has provided for us so far this year.
I saw a couple of questions, but I did not get, the questions are coming in faster than I could answer them all. But I saw a question that said something about, so you're going to collect the computers. I don't know whether the person that asked that question came in after I just said what, but maybe going back to several more minutes into this presentation on this webinar, I did not say I was collecting the computers. I said that we are expecting that we're not going to create a digital divide by disconnecting perhaps the only tool that teachers and parents and students have in connecting with teaching and learning by taking away that tool. I did not at all say that I was collecting the computers. And so the plans as we move forward, I hope that you will help us to do this very complex work. ESSER, the ARP, which is the American Recovery Plan, that's the one with the $89 million. We have not had all of the information that we need for developing that plan. And we are positive that this plan will change ESSER 2 because that's the way it was designed, to be able to creatively think collectively with staff and parents and students and community partners to be able to reimagine. So what does that mean for Waterbury? And so we have not gotten anywhere close to that with the new monies that we found out Monday that we were going to be receiving. Keeping in mind, we don't have any of this money yet. We have not spent a dime of this money. We are really trying to be collaborative in getting input from everyone so that the final plans, when we actually do start to spend some of this money, it's going to be with purpose, and it's going to be something that we can measure the outcomes. And someone asked, and I'm seeing here, does it mean that we can increase the number of psychologists? I want to repeat something that's very significant here. The narratives behind all of these different pockets of money are very clear about how soon we need to spend the money by. For instance, in the ESSER 2, we have to spend this money by 2023. And then for the 89 million that I just talked about, we have to spend that by 2024. So no, we can't add a lot of people. And here's why we can't. Because after this money goes away in 2024, there is no other money to sustain that. Now, I want you to envision you're getting $130 million. And if you spend it all on something that you can't afford at the end of that year, that means you got to let it all go. So no, we're not going to just add a whole lot of people or a whole lot of things that we can't sustain. But what we can do is we can strategically determine, after this money goes, if this really works well for us, how are we going to be able to sustain it over time? And so there's some things that may have to go in order to allow us to keep those things that are really working very well. If you feel with so many people. And that's happened to Waterbury before. That's happened to just about every school district that's ever had lots of money at one time. And they did not have a plan for how are you going to sustain this when the money runs out. That's what causes chaos. I am not going to cause chaos. We have enough of that with COVID-19. So I have to be very clear that we cannot just add things that we can't afford after this money goes away. So we'll be very strategic. And maybe the answer is not going to be what everybody wants to hear, but I do believe that everyone needs to understand that this is a pocket of money that is a one-time administration to the school district across the nation, one time. And so how we spend it is going to be so important to transforming this district. So can we add some? Can we add additional positions? Absolutely. But we have to add them knowing that we are going to have to sustain them. And we've got to be bold enough to say, if we can't sustain them, we shouldn't add them. So what goes away to be able to get what we really need to sustain our district? So we will be examining a lot of things. Of course, we have our special education audit that just came out. We'll actually get to implement some of the things and recommendations. But that comes with a strategic way of thinking and organizing your district and your staffing plan so that you know that at the end of this, you can sustain it. The money can be used for some building upgrades. What we're doing is we're doing a facility study. Now, this is not just to study facilities. This is going to study enrollment trends throughout Waterbury. It's going to examine every single building and facility that we own and anything that we might envision doing. And I'll give you an example. We've talked about expansion of pre-K. We have no room in the inn. So as we have this facility study, the people that we're going to select to do the facility study, and it has to go out for a response for proposal. I have to have a committee to review the proposals. We have to bring people in so that we could see if they're really equipped to do the work that we're asking them to do. And then we have to select someone, and then that person has to go to work, or that firm has to go to work. They will evaluate buildings. They will evaluate buildings for longevity. They will evaluate it for preventative maintenance, as well as major projects that we have to be able to fund over time. And that goes beyond roofing. That might go into boilers and HVAC system, or maybe we'll examine, do we need to put HVAC systems in our schools that are not air conditioned? What do we need to do if we need more room? Do we add on to a building? Do we enhance that building to accommodate more students attending a particular site? All of those things are not something that the superintendent decides just because she wants to. This is something that's done with all of the different professionals that come to the table to evaluate structures. We could have schools that are in neighborhoods with a declining enrollment. We have schools that already have an increased enrollment. They will help us to really give us a roadmap, and then that roadmap will lead the district for the next 10, 15 years from now. Because once that study is done well, it tells you what you need to do, what you need to budget for over time. And so as you're looking and examining different programs, if there's truly a desire to expand pre-K, and if we're looking for pre-K center in Waterbury, what would it take to be able to do that? Where would it go? And can we afford it? All of those things will be at our fingertips after this particular study is done. And please do not misunderstand me. I am not saying that that is the outcome of that. What I'm saying is that's the information that they give us for us to be able to go back and to make some decisions about, so what are you going to do as a result of that? So it will involve not only HVAC and roofs, but elevators, making it ADA accessible, making certain that the ventilation is really up to to code in every single school. That's security. That's not only cameras, but entryways, and examining all of the facilities, examining what do you need to do to prevent things from falling apart, and then examining those things that have already fallen apart and we're holding together by trying to do the best that we can, but it's not good enough. And so what do you have to do to be able to repair or replace something that can no longer be repaired? And then what do you do first? And that's when you put that into a master plan that allows you to know, and it allows you to know as our team members, allows you to know, well, in 2025, my school is up for these kind of enhancements. And it allows you to plan, because maybe that's a school that you don't need to have summer school in because their major project is coming up. And then it allows you to plan so that you can put it in your budget. And of course, this is something that we're hoping that some of it will be covered by the ESSER 2 and the ARP money. And if it can be, keep in mind, we have to get this approved, but if it can be, then we'll have that roadmap to go to the people that will help us to make that decision and say, this is what we need in Waterbury. Is this fundable by these ESSER funds that have now been released? Because keep in mind, it might not be something that they can fund, but we're certainly looking at it through those lenses. And we're not going to stop writing building grants in the process. We're not going to stop seeking funds that are specific to buildings, but with that roadmap, we'll know exactly what we're seeking, as opposed to just, can I have more money because I think I need to enhance a school? You see what I'm saying? Someone asked, why is the hybrid model being taken away? Well, no one's taking away anything. It is the desire of the entire state that we return to school in the fall in person. We are keeping virtual academy. We're asking for input into how we can make virtual academy meet the needs of our students. So we're not taking anything away. We are, however, making certain that we're going to be able to come back in person. And we recognize that there's a need for us to really differentiate how we meet the learning needs of students. We just have to define what that means. We can't just simply call it, a virtual academy and say, well, if you prefer going virtual, go to virtual. That's not going to work. We have to define the why. Who applies for it? Who qualifies for it? It can't be a way to keep people out of being in-person schooling. It has to be a greater need for the academic needs of the child. So as we're defining that, then we're asking for people to really, who can think outside of just what we've been going through and what we had in the past, but who can envision what a future might look like for us to really provide for all of our students in the most meaningful way. None of this work is quick. And so as a final, before I close this session and continue to answer your questions, I do want you to know that there's going to be a lot of committee works, a lot of it. And part of that is going to be also examining innovative learning environments for students. And by that, I mean, not only just examining what we have in terms of alternative schools, but innovative schools. Alternative schools sometimes get the reputation that it's only for students who have been dismissed from their traditional school because of behavior. But alternative learning environments, innovative schools, address far more than that. I mean, they really address the needs for students to learn in an environment that's different than the traditional. It could be anywhere from different times of the day, different periods of the day. It could be different subjects that you're going to teach that you bring into a particular learning environment that connects children to the workforce while they're still in school. a hands-on experience that we talk about sometimes, but we have a real challenge figuring out how to actually make that happen. So an innovative learning environment could actually provide for that. It doesn't look like anything that we have. It doesn't look like anything that we used to have. It looks like something that would best meet the needs of our students. It may address students that have been incarcerated. It may, but it could also address the needs of that honor student who simply needs a different learning environment to learn in and to prosper. And what might that look like in Waterbury? I have, and you should expect that we're going to have a task force working on this. It is not going to happen in the fall. It is something that you will probably need to study for a couple of years to really get a grasp on it, go out to see some of these programs across the nation and learn from what they're doing and what they've done, maybe even learn some of the mistakes that they've made, so that we can learn from that in Waterbury, so that we can look at that learning environment for what it could mean for our students moving forward. So I'm talking about the future. I'm not talking about next year and perhaps not even the year after that. But I am talking about something in the making that we should be. I'm excited about the possibilities of seeing what that could look like to meet the learning needs of a group of students that perhaps are not going to be learning the best that they can in just a traditional learning environment. The testing that we have been afforded, the COVID testing, have afforded us an opportunity to be able to get rapid COVID tests that will allow us to know more quickly and more reliably whether someone has tested positive for COVID. It also provides us to have the documentation for a negative COVID that will allow for access to some of the programs that we might consider having for the end of the school year in June. We also have a large number of our students that have been vaccinated. We're in the process of determining who they are. And so that schools will have access to that for ease of access to activities. And we are going to be able to have even more COVID testing for all of the students as we're working with this new initiative that was just afforded to us literally not very long ago, that we are working on a plan that will help people to know that people are free from COVID. So between the vaccines and between the COVID tests that we will now have access to, I think it's after the 17th of May, then we are seeing more and more of the reliable data that comes to us to say that people are COVID free and able to engage in more in person, as well as more activities that we could plan out. And so I want to thank you for attending. I think I covered everything that I had on the agenda, which was, what happens in May and June, what happens during the summer, what's going to be happening as we plan for the fall of 21-22. And I hope that all of you have heard that you'll have opportunities to provide feedback, and that you're invited if you would like to participate in the committed work of reimagining education in Waterbury Public Schools. I want to thank you. And I actually am running out of time, I think. But this has been great. And I invite your questions. If we have not provided them for you in this webinar, we will answer every one of the questions and we'll put it out there. And of course, one of the last questions I'm seeing is, since May 19th, Connecticut is opening back, will we be able to actually have graduation this year? I did answer that question at the beginning. We were planning on graduation before this came out. So we have scheduled graduation. Our graduates and their principals have already discussed it, and we have the dates all. We have got it covered. We will have graduation this year and a few more activities as well. So I want to thank all of you, And I appreciate your being on this webinar, and please do continue to send your questions. We will answer them. We will have them posted on our website, and we will have other ways for you to indicate that you're interested in serving in this very long and challenging and worthwhile work of transforming education and reimagining education in Waterbury Public Schools. Thank you very much.